film reviews and movie news with Stuart Pink and Mark Searby.
Thanks for tuning in to Phoenix FM. My name is Mark Searby. I'm usually reviewing the films. However, today, in a very special interview, we are here with actor Stephen Moyer. Now, Stephen is going to tell us about his latest film. He's also going to tell us about growing up in Brentwood as well. We've finally got the man to tell us what it was like. So, Stephen, thank you for joining us.
I used to talk about the fact that, you might not think that Brentwood's got anything, but we've got like the biggest thermos factory, and it used to be like the one thing that we had. I think we had the first Pizza Express in Essex as well, which was a big deal back then.
You see, you've got a history of Brentwood already, and you've been gone for so long as well.
And on the crossroads, what's that? Is Gallows Corner? No. What was that place called opposite the roundabout, diametrically opposite to Pizza Express? There was a corner. The shop.
You're talking about Wilson's Corner.
Wilson's Corner. Thank you. Wilson's Corner. Because...
Well, let me ask you about Wilson's Corner then, because obviously, you've come back over the past several years to Brentwood time and again. Wilson's Corner, to you, having driven in America, is it as dangerous driving through Wilson's Corner? Is
it still a double roundabout?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, it didn't used to be. In the old days, it was traffic lights. When I was growing up there, that was traffic lights, and they made it into a double roundabout. And here's a bit of trivia. There used to be a great. I'm really sucking this up from my history here. There was on that street. There was a sports shop, and it was called Jeff Robbins, and it was opposite like where the steps are to go up to the court. There is it the court or the magistrate's court? Is it?
Oh yeah, yeah.
And there was a bus stop there. I've got a really, really naughty story about that. I might tell you in a bit. and then on the actual high street was Kelly's Records. And it was a great independent record store where I used to buy all my vinyl.
What sort of vinyl were you buying then?
In 1976, I bought my first album. I don't think it could have been my money, but it was an Elvis album. And then I used to go there, and then I bought my first single in that shop. And that was, I believe, Down in the Tube Station at Midnight by The Jam.
Wow, that's so memorable. Remember that?
Yeah. Well, that was very important. There's just along from where Kelly's Records was. There's what in America they call ATM, but like a where you get your money from the bank. And I when I was about 17, I was in a bar there. So if you've turned left at Wilson's Corner and you're going down the high street, there used to be a bar on the left-hand side. What's that called there? Is that still there, that bar?
No.
There's an ATM over there. What do you call it? A money thing.
A hole in the wall.
Hole in the wall cash point. And I was over the other side of the street, and my mate was about 17, 18. Best friend in the world, lives in Southend. And he was very drunk, and he was trying to get money out of the ATM. And he and it wasn't letting him get his money out. And I was watching him from the other side of the street with a girlfriend. And Alan walked away from the wall, drew a line with his foot. He was totally by himself. Very important part of the story. He was totally by himself, drew a line with his foot, turned around and ran at the hole in the wall with his head and ran straight into the machine because it wasn't giving him any money. And then fell on the floor. And I ran over the street with my girlfriend at the time, went into the pub, got the boys out, and we had to take him to hospital because he'd got stitches on his head. I swear to God, true story. And there was nobody watching him. He wasn't doing it for anybody. The ATM hadn't given him any money, and he decided to run at the wall and take it out on the wall. There you go. That's a story I've never told before.
So that sounds like you were quite rebellious in your younger years in Brentwood.
It was a pretty wild time. I can't remember what that place was called. Yes, but Wilson's Corner was always taking your life into your hands, going through that little confluence of vehicles.
It still
and,
is.
And is Wilson's Corner was a shop, wasn't it?
There's a huge building on that corner, yes, which is now several different shops, and it used to have offices above it.
It was a furniture store called Wilson's, I want to say.
Yes.
There you go. See, got it.
Even more knowledge.
Yeah.
Right, I should ask you about Confession first, really.
Yes.
Can you give us a quick synopsis of Confession?
So a man turns up at a church, having just been shot, and it's a Friday evening. The priest is about to close up the church, and he forces the priest to lock all the doors in the church and holds him at gunpoint. And as we can sort of tell by the name of the film, he's going to sort of admit to his sins, shall we say. There's something that he's got to talk about his past, and he feels like because he's been shot, it's possibly he's going to be his sort of last rites, and he wants to confess. But in so doing, the priest starts telling him a little bit about his life as well, and we start to realize that there is a few similarities that they didn't realize about both of their pasts, and thus the drama ensues. It's very difficult to sort of talk about because I don't want to give anything away. It's a very spoiler heavy movie, but that is a pretty good sort of beginning of I play a character called Victor Strong. I'm the guy who's been shot. He's a gangster, and the movie's set in Boston in America. Colm Meaney is the priest, and he is and he is sort of the priest of this big Catholic church in the middle of Boston. So that's kind of the premise. Dave Beaton, who wrote it, who is also based in Essex, he lives in Colchester. Dave and I had worked together. His other name is Ronnie Thompson. He used to write novels under the name Ronnie Thompson, and so I always knew him as Ronnie, because we did a film called The Hatton Garden Job together, and we sort of stayed in touch ever since. And he got in touch with me during quarantine, first lockdown in sort of March, April 2020, and he said, "I'm writing something for you," and I am sort of using the model of quarantine and lockdown as an idea to sort of create a one location movie with very few people in it, with a splinter crew. And I think I've come up with an idea. I'm going to send you the first draft. And honestly, that first draft was almost kind of what we shot. It was an amazingly constructed, rather brilliant idea to be able to use one location. So, and Colm was the first person that we had on the top of the list to play the father. So we got very lucky.
I want to ask you about Colm Meaney, who many people will know from loads of different things. You know,
loads of different things.
Yeah. What's he like to work with in such a close environment?
Utter twat. No, he's a complete and utter delight. I was a massive fan anyway. I think it's 1988 that, is it 88? He did a film called The Commitments, which was the first of the Roddy Doyle trio. And he's in all of them. He's in The Van, and I think it's called The Snapper. My mind is blanking, but he's also in Con Air and just done so much stuff. He's just absolutely brilliant. And it was sort of a dream scenario to sort of be stuck in a room with him we only shot this over 12 days, but it was a really amazing situation. We shot during a period of time when everything was closed. It was the second lockdown, and nothing was open. No hotels were open, no restaurants were open. And even though it's set in Boston, we shot it in Suffolk, and in a little town called, I think I say it wrong. It's spelt Debenham. but I think the locals say Debham. And their church there, doubling for Boston. And we were in a little golf club called Kingfishers in Suffolk, where we had two little wooden cottages next to each other. And he lives in Mallorca, Colm, and he brought over this amazing, like, cured, like, you know, ham that he loves, and different bits of cheese and stuff from Mallorca, and we'd go and sort of like buy our food every night after work and come back, and we'd have little feasts together and learn the 724 pages of dialogue we had, because there's only two people in the film. And so I just had a lovely time with him. Honestly, we've remained very close. He's a spectacular bloke.
Really is a DIY job, isn't it?
In what respect?
For the film, you know, having to do it yourself, not many people there because it's during lockdown, and you're living on a golf course.
Yes. Yeah, no creature comforts. Like, you know, very low budget. You know, we no dressing rooms, no makeup trailers. You know, the vestry was where we put our costumes on, and the church hall was the makeup. But you know, that's the sort of very nature of doing low budget movies anyway. I love the freedom that gives you in many respects. You know, it's down and dirty guerrilla filmmaking, and to shoot something like this in 12 days is quite an extraordinary. It's a difficult place to put yourself in, because you have to be very economical, but you have to be really smart about how you shoot. And there's one sequence where we shot 17 pages in a single take, and that's a 27-minute take, and that in itself is not something you normally do. You know, on a usual, like, sort of nice budget movie, you're doing 2.5 minutes a day, which usually is about 2.5 pages a day. You know, on a television show, you're doing 4.5, 5 pages a day, sometimes more, but on a feature to be doing like 27-minute takes. And if you imagine, Mark, like you're doing a reset, right? Because when you reset makeup, you reset props, you reset the cameras, you know, the batteries get changed, people come in, everybody takes a breath of fresh air, and or in Colm's case, goes out and has their 27th cigarette of the day, and then they come back in again, and then you start again, but that's another 27 minutes. And when you're doing single camera movie making, and you're doing a wide, a medium, you know, 2 close-ups or two tight singles or French overs or whatever it is, or that's 27 minutes per take. So that's not many takes that you're going to get on a gigantic scene like that. So it's very, very, you know, you're putting yourself under sort of quite a boiling pot of pressure, but lovely as well. And I love it, you know.
I mean, you were saying there that, you know, you're shooting a number of pages over a day at least. Add into the mix that the film is played out mainly in real time. So is it adding additional pressure to what you're already dealing with?
Yes. I mean, I've always loved that as an idea, that idea of shooting something that takes place as you're seeing it happen. If you imagine, right, I've already said this, my character is shot at the beginning. So when you're creating blood on a white shirt, if you think of like Reservoir Dogs or something like that, where Tim Roth is shot, you know, and as blood starts to dry, if you imagine a piece of tissue paper on the floor with a bit of drop of water on it, the water sort of separates, it goes through the material, which means you then sort of get bleed through, which then means that shirt isn't usable again if you're doing the shot again with the same amount of blood, right? Because it looks different on camera to how it looks when it's immediately shot. So you have to think of that about like that. Every scars and moments within the film where somebody gets a scar across their face. If you're shooting another bit of the film where later on in the day, maybe where it's earlier on in the film and the person doesn't have the scar, then you have to remove the scar, do the makeup from, you know, and if you're doing this over 12 days, it's a very elaborate sort of process. And and because the continuity has to remain all the way through for the 90 minutes, like the hair has to be exactly as it was from the shot before. So you may have shot the end of the movie like on the third day. Yeah, you know, I heard this great story about Donald Sutherland the other day, which was basically, he always says it's in his contract. I think it's in his contract that you shoot the middle of the movie last. You shoot the middle of the movie last. Yes, contractually. And the idea behind it is, because when you first turn up, you don't really know what you're doing. You're sort of fishing and you're finding the character. But at the beginning of the film, the audience aren't going to be aware necessarily that that's what's going on, because they're also discovering this character for the first time. But if then the middle of the movie, the guy knows exactly what he's doing, the audience will then sort of believe what is happening during the middle of the film. And then the end of the film doesn't matter, because it's usually, you know, sort of crazy and nuts. But if if you know what you're doing at the middle of the film, so the last few weeks you're doing the middle of the film, then hopefully you've taken the audience on a good enough journey for them to understand what the fuck it is you're doing. Which I thought was really interesting.
I mean, that's going to take some acting talent, isn't it?
I worked with Donald back in 2001, and he's extraordinary. I've got a couple of great stories about him. Anyway, let's carry on.
I was going to ask you about the challenges of filming during lockdown. I know we don't want to talk about it, you know, we're trying to move past that, but with something like this, because it's so small, it's such a small budget, and as you said, it is ultimately two people and a director and a couple of other people. What additional pressures is that?
You know, I love indie filmmaking. I love the pressure that it puts on you. There is there are very few creature comforts within an indie movie, and I think as a sort of the work ethic of just having to get it done is I often enjoy the creativity that informs. It makes people have to really make creative decisions fast, and often at the end of the day, when you've got an hour left and you're nowhere near finishing your day, you have to make choices that often ends up making sort of really creative camera moves, because you know, and I found this from really early on doing BBC dramas when I was like 21, 22, 23, because in England we don't tend to pay overtime, so the day in England is an 8 till 7 day. In America, they just carry on. They just pay the overtime. They just go, we shoot until it's done, right? But they don't do that in England. But I really love the kick bollock scramble of the last hour. It's like, it is a complete and utter, right, how do we shoot this and how do we make it happen in the best possible way? And so it can be incredibly enjoyable. I think, to answer your question more succinctly though, there was a certain joy to shooting in lockdown. I've done something like 7 films during this period of time, and they've all been sort of in the indie world. And what's really interesting about it is I came to this project from Bulgaria. I'd been doing a film in Bulgaria, and I arrived after 35 days in Bulgaria to London, and we were lucky enough to have a house in London, and I went to our house in London and was there for 10 days. Part of the governmental sort of quarantine was that you had to sort of stay inside for 10 days, and it was the second lockdown. But what that actually meant was I didn't get to see all my friends like I normally would when I go home to London. I didn't get to go to my sort of favorite bars or restaurants or places or whatever, right? I had to just stay at home. And what that meant was I had this incredible sort of privilege of having 10 days by myself to go down the rabbit hole that I needed to go down to research my character, but also learn like 30 pages of dialogue. It was like learning a play. And I really set myself a sort of 9 till 5 sort of structure every single day where I would sit down and work. And that's not something that I usually get the privilege to do, because I've got kids. I've got 4 kids, and you know, I run a company and you know, married and have a life and blah 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 blah. So literally being by myself and being able to do that was and that has been the case on every job I've done, because you arrive somewhere and you have to quarantine for a week before you're allowed to go anywhere near any of the makeup or the hair or anybody or costume, has been fantastic for me, because I went immediately from Suffolk to Montana, and I was doing a movie in Montana, and I sat in that hotel room preparing for that character and learning all the lines for that project before going on set. And that's not something that I usually get the opportunity to do. So for me, it was just like a week or 10 days or 5 days here and there that I would never ordinarily get. And I was very thankful for it.
I want to actually mention about True Blood, obviously. Yeah. Huge TV show around the world, went on for so long and massive. Yeah. I was going to ask you what it was like to be a part of, but I think you've answered that quite a lot over the years. What I want to ask you about actually is the amount of nudity. Were you afraid of doing the nudity in it?
Good question. I, as a human, am sort of allergic to the gym. It's not something that I take. It's not something that I need in my life. And yet I was 37 when I started True Blood, and I was working with the lovely Ryan Quanton, who plays Anna's brother in True Blood, and Ryan is probably like 10 years younger than me, I guess. So he would have been like 27 at the time, and Skarsgård is a similar age. I think Skarsgård was 29 when he started the job, and Joe Manganiello, who has probably got. I mean, between Ryan Quanton and Joe Manganiello, the two most absurdly stupid bodies in televisual history. It's nuts, and all much younger than me. So I spent a lot of time having to go to the gym, under duress. The only way I will go to the gym is somebody's like literally got a gun to my head, and but I also realized that I was going to be having to do a lot of that stuff. So I just made it part of my sort of day. I went every day for 10 years, and haven't been one day in 2 years during this quarantine. But yeah, no, it's one of those things where when I first read that script, I knew that there was going to be nudity. I did start working out. I started running, you just have to put the work in. It's as simple as that, because ultimately you're the one who's going to have to look back and watch yourself and see your little blubby dad bod on television. So it wasn't so much the actual filming. I'd actually done an awful lot of nudity in a lot of the jobs that I'd done. It wasn't so much the sort of doing the act of the sort of the sexual content that was embarrassing to me, but we're all a little bit vain about the way we look, and so you kind of, when you're up against Ryan Quanton and Joe Manganiello, you have to put the hard yards in, I'm afraid. So I didn't really think about it in those terms, other than just like, this is part of my job. And like when you're doing an accent, I'm obviously playing American accent in that. You have to do the yards. You have to do the work. You have a dialect coach, and your body has a body coach. And when you're singing, you have a vocal coach. It's literally like having a trainer to do the thing that you're training in.
So you say about having a trainer and everything, but if that was me in your position and I had to get naked next to Joe Manganiello and Alexander Skarsgård, I'd probably just leave and get another actor in, to be honest with you.
Yeah, well, a body double would be lovely. I'm very excited about when they can get face replacement to a point where I won't actually have to do any body work at all. I mean, Scars isn't somebody who loves the gym either. He was not somebody who spent any time in the gym before True Blood, and he likes his glog. He's somebody who likes the bar as much as I did once upon a time, and so he had to do the hard yards too. When he was training for Tarzan, he I think it was maybe the final season. I think it was the final season. And he was just eating like salmon and tuna and like by the gallon and working out like a lunatic. And you could tell that scars had just been around because there was this trail of fish everywhere. He walked. People were kind of like gagging every time he walked past. It was hilarious.
Obviously, on the show, you met your now wife, Anna Paquin.
Yeah.
So I wanted to ask you a main question here. Have you brought Anna to Brentwood? And if so, what is she made of it?
So, Mum lives in Billericay. My sister lives in Epping. I grew up in Herongate, which is quite near Brentwood. But no family there anymore. One of my oldest, bestest friends lives there. My really best friend lives in Southend. So we have a house in London. So there's very little need to sort of go through Brentwood. I love Brentwood, but it's not somewhere that sort of is a port of call because Mum's in Billericay. But for many years, I was the patron of Brentwood Theatre. So I have come in to do the odd little thing when I can, obviously quite rare, for Brentwood Theatre. And Anna has been with me, and she hasn't shared in the delights of the First Pizza Express in Essex. I used to work. I did take her on a little tour, actually, because I used to work. It's not there anymore, but at the bottom of the high street on the right-hand side, there used to be a burger joint called Feeders, and which is no longer there. And I flipped burgers there from when I was 15 or 16. Maybe I must have been 16, I guess. Probably had to be, didn't I? So I flipped burgers there for quite a long time. I did like a week at McDonald's in Brentwood High Street. I worked at the Seven Arches, which I hear is closed. It used to be at the back of Hartswood, at the back of King George's.
Yeah. On
that the back side of it.
Yeah.
There used to be a fantastic pub there called the Seven Arches, which was like the hangout, and I worked behind the bar there. So I have done the sort of tour of all the terrible places that I frequented and did some awful stuff. I have done that, and she loves coming back. She loves coming home. She's very close to one of my best friends. She adores him, and so whenever we come back, we see him. But that's Southend. So we tend to. It's not through want of not wanting to go to Brentwood. It's just that it's when we are back, it's rare, and you end up seeing family, and not getting to come to those places.
Has Anna picked up any Essex slang?
So I don't know if you know this, but in America, they say twat instead of twat, and she says twat. she uses a lot of my. There's so many things that are part of my makeup that are born and bred in Brentwood. So there are tons of phrases that I mean, I'm not going to be able to think of one now, but there are tons of phrases that I have that are just pure Essex that she uses 100%.
I can give you an example of one, actually.
I'd love you to.
Yeah, because several years ago when I was at San Diego Comic-Con and True Blood had a panel.
Yes.
You were there and Anna was there, and most of the cast apart from Skarsgård were there.
Yeah.
At some point.
Was that the year that I had the cardboard cutout of Alex?
Yes.
I made a cardboard cutout of Alex to bring because he couldn't come. Yes.
That was it. There was a question or something that was asked, and somewhere along the line, I remember Anna turning and to Deborah Ann Wall and going, "That's because she's a ginge." And I kind of thought, the whole room is not going to get that joke apart from me and the other half who have come from Essex to get that one joke.
Yeah. Oh no, there's loads. There's so many. I mean, so many that it's so much part of our vernacular that I don't even realize I'm doing it. She's got a great one for her brother because her brother's got sort of dark hair, and but he has a red beard. When he grows his beard in, it's kind of gingery, and she calls him Fanta face. And so when she's talking about people who have got ginger hair, she goes, "I wonder if they've got Fanta pants." And Fanta pants is one of my favorites.
I mean, we should get off that because, you know, it's a bit rude, but I've got a couple more questions for you, Stephen. That's
Go ahead,
it.
mate.
But I wanted to say, you know, what does Brentwood mean to you now as somebody who lives in LA and is doing all of these great shows and great films? But what does Brentwood still mean to you?
I mean, it was the first sort of town that going to, it's so funny to think about it, isn't it? Because I remember getting on the bus and coming to Brentwood, and that was a massive thing. Like coming to Brentwood was like my going to London when I was young. Kelly's Records was like sort of the center of my universe for a little bit when I used to search out indie stuff, and when I was sort of starting to develop music habits when I was 16, 17, you know, come in with my pocket money or my work money that I'd got and spending it on albums. And so Brentwood High Street was massive, and you know, I saw Star Wars. I don't know where the theatre is now in Brentwood, but there used to be a precinct down by, you know, down on the left hand side, there's that sort of ruined bit of the Pilgrim ruin, whatever it is. That's where the theatre used to be. Is it still there?
No, that got knocked down and replaced with another centre called the Bay Tree Centre, which has just got shops and a gym in it. So
I've not been there since then.
We have no cinema whatsoever.
Really?
We've had no cinema since they knocked it down, and I think that was the last film I saw there was Scream 3.
Oh my gosh!
So you know,
that was the center of my universe. We used to go to Saturday morning movies there, the Saturday morning picture show when I was really young, and that cinema, I have a visceral visual memory. You had to go up steps to go to that cinema, and made of like classic sort of 80s brutalist concrete, yeah. And I remember the queue in 1977 for Star Wars, because I saw Star Wars there. And then on a Monday night, during my teens, they used to have, I could be wrong here, but I think it was £1 a night, just on Mondays. And it would be all the youth of Brentwood would be there on a Monday night watching whatever film had come out. And it was a riot. It was a riot. People would be throwing things and screaming and talking. And then, in fact, it made the front page of the Gazette because it had become such a sort of, you know, terrible youth, like ruining the town. Yes, and I think another thing that made the front page of the Gazette was, I'm not going to tell that story. It's so naughty.
No, you should. Listen, we'll edit it out. It's fine. You can trust us.
No, you won't. I'm too long in the tooth.
Well, let me ask you another question then. You know, you were talking about the youth of Brentwood. Did you ever put washing up liquid in the fountains in Brentwood?
No, I did not.
Okay.
Was that a thing?
Yes. And it still was a thing until they actually switched them off completely because people just kept doing it.
Why? Yeah. Oh my God, I didn't know that.
Yeah, so basically it would be, you know, lovely fountains, very nice, and then loads of washing up liquid, and it would spill out onto the roads. And then there would be traffic jams as cars would try to get just around the corner from Wilson's Corner, trying to get to St. There'd be soap suds everywhere.
I never heard about that.
Yeah.
I will tell you one of the little things we used to do, which was really funny. The Brentwood Gazette, you know, it's so difficult sort of describing this to kids, like my kids these days, that the internet wasn't a thing, you know, and the Brentwood Gazette was literally everything sort of was in the Brentwood Gazette, whether it was sport, or whether it was the news, or whether it was kind of like you were looking for a job or classifieds, or if you were buying something. And in the back pages, there was this thing, So naughty. So we would do this thing when it came out. I think it came out on a Thursday night, and on a Friday, like at the weekend, a bunch of us would get together, led by my sister's best friend, and it would be like there's a speedboat for sale, right? Speedboat for sale. Trailer comes with own trailer, size engine, blah 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 blah. And then you'd go to another section of the classifieds and see what else was for sale, right? And then you'd read, you'd call up the speedboat people, and you'd go, "Hello there, hello. I'm ringing about your advertisement in the Gazette. Oh, great, yeah. Is it still for sale? Yeah. And does it have a handle? Well, yeah. I mean, yeah. You sort of lift it up and put it on the thing with a handle. So yeah, it has a handle. Oh, great. And would I be able to fit 2 kids in there? Yeah. No, you'd probably have to get like a family in there. Oh, really? Oh, okay. And would it be safe? Would I be able to sort of, is it big enough or small enough that I'd be able to sort of get it up the curb?" And basically you would find a commercial, and what we were describing then would be like a pram. And you'd find something else that was in the Gazette that was being sold. And then you would describe that thing without telling the actual thing as it was. And basically then convince the person that, "Oh, no, I wouldn't. I'm calling about the pram. Just, I was trying to get the pram." And we would do this for hours. And the classifieds were such a big thing back then. But oh my God, hours and hours of laughter.
You see, I thought you was going to give like a sensible, very methodical answer. And then instead, you've just given me answers which are basically saying that in your youth you ran riot.
I did. I was the washing up liquid boy. The actual story that's really naughty was that I can't do it. It's so bad. No, I'm not going to do it.
Okay. In which case, don't tell me, Stephen. But what
it's within the classifieds realm.
Is it like the sexy classifieds?
No.
Right.
No,
okay.
It was no. It wasn't that. I don't think they existed back then. I don't think they existed back then.
Film reviews and movie news with Stuart Pink and Mark Searby.